run, party, repeat. Welcome to the East Coast Adventures Dirt and Vert Podcast, where we talk all things running, racing, and training to help you get ready for your next big adventure.
Learn from our successes and our failures, and have fun at the same time. Join us right here every week with inspiring guests who share their captivating tales from the trails. And remember, nobody cares.
Run faster. All right, welcome back to the Dirt and Vert Podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Matt.
And we have a guest that you all have probably saw her recently for her performance from the JFK 50. But Rachel Drake is joining us today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about who she is and how she got into running.
All right. Yeah, my name's Rachel. I'm originally from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and I am a mother to a 2-year-old. I'm a newly minted doctor. I'm about 6 months into my residency. Let's see. I have a dog named Teddy, a scruffy rescue dog from El Paso, Texas. And I got into running in high school. My middle school PE teacher was the track and cross country coach, and she kind of recruited me my junior year of high school. I was on the tennis team, and we would do a timed mile every year. And I think I was the only person that actually tried when we did that. And I think she just saw me running out on the track and pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you should come out for the track team in the spring." So that's kind of what got me started. She ran at the University of Minnesota, and I ended up going there as well. So I ran there and then moved to Portland, Oregon, where I did my MD PhD. So it was 2 years in medical school. And then I took 5 years to get my PhD. I studied heart metabolism in the developing heart. So trying to understand how the fetal heart transitions from carbohydrate to fat metabolism after you're born, and how that's affected by growth restriction. And then went back to medical school for another 2 years and had a baby. So I took an extra year just so I could have a little more time to hang out with him. And then moved to Salt Lake City about 6 months ago, and I started my residency here at the University of Utah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's a good story right there.
So did you continue running the entire time that you were doing all of your school and training? And, you know, obviously with a kid being born and all that, I would imagine you slowed down a little bit, but did you continue?
Yeah, there's been a lot of lapses. One word that I like to use to describe like my training in general, but also in life, is that your running kind of breathes with the times or whatever you have going on. So when I graduated from college, I was pretty burnt out, and I didn't really run at all for probably about a year. Just felt like I needed time. And then eventually discovered the trails of Portland, discovered Forest Park, met some friends, got back into running. And then I ran pretty consistently up until I had my son. I ran all throughout my pregnancy. Obviously, you know, not as much or as fast as I was before I was pregnant, but I was lucky that I was able to continue running. And then took some time off after he was born. And then when I got back into it, I actually got injured. I had a stress fracture in my sacrum, which I had a couple stress fractures in college, but after college, I had about a 10-year stretch with no injuries at all. So that was pretty hard. And I think I probably took 12 weeks off there, no running. So other than that, though, I feel like I've been consistently running, not necessarily training at a high level, but just running because it gives me purpose and gives me a lot of joy.
10 years with no injury. That's impressive.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
I can barely go 2 races without injuring myself.
I think it's trail running. Like, no, if you compare it to track or road, it's like, you know, there's a lot more lateral movements. There's climbing, descending, technical terrain. I think it's just that, like, the heterogeneity of the way that we're moving our bodies that, at least for me, made me stay healthy for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely way better for impact too than just running on road, for sure.
That and concrete.
So when you graduated college, or when you got out of college, then you kind of took a little break, burn out. So
yeah,
you running a lot. I would imagine in college you were probably running 80 to 100 mile weeks consistently, or no?
It wasn't so much the volume that made me feel burnt out. It was more of an emotional burnout because I was I was on a big team, and only a certain number of people on the team could travel. So there's probably 45 women on the team and only 9 or 10 travel. And I was always the person who was like on the cusp of possibly making the travel team. Like I had to race for a position on our conference team multiple times. So I feel like I was just very stressed and like I wasn't running with joy. I was running with fear and feeling like I constantly had to prove myself. And rather than having that mindset of how good can I be, like a curious mindset, I was just constantly trying to be good enough to travel. And I feel like that really was not a productive, it wasn't healthy and it wasn't a productive way of seeing the world. But I was a young college student. I didn't know any better. So,
Well, I mean, that's a hard thing to do anyways, like putting that stress on yourself, being right on the cusp
Yeah.
all the time.
mm-hmm.
So
It's-
what
yeah.
what events did you do in college?
I ran, so cross country, we run a 6K. And then in track, I think my first track season, I ran one steeplechase race, which was really fun. But then I had those stress fractures. So I was put into the bucket of being a fragile athlete. And therefore, I was not allowed to do the steeplechase anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. Other than that, I ran anywhere from the 800 mile up to the 10K.
And now she's running, 100Ks, 100 milers, and she was put in the bucket of.
I
Way
was put
harder
in the
than a
bucket of like
steeplechase.
injury prone. That was not a label that you wanted, but I definitely had that label in college, unfortunately.
You need a shirt made when you go back to college that says, I ran for 10 years with no injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to think back.
So you said you were a newly minted doctor. So did you go back to school later on?
So, no, I kind of just like all throughout my educational journey, I just like really stretched it out. So, most people take 4 years to get their bachelor's degree. I took 5 with, collegiate running. You can redshirt a year. So, I redshirted my first year and then I had 4 years of eligibility. Then I got a BS in biochemistry and a BA in Spanish, and then went straight into medical school, but it was a combined dual degree program. So I was in this program for 10 years straight at Oregon Health and Science University, where it was a combined medical degree and a doctor of philosophy or PhD. So I was in it the whole time. I never went back. It just took a very long time to finish, but I was
Hey,
living life, Yeah.
that is a good way not to burn yourself out too. So kudos to you for that.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I really fell in love with running during graduate school and embraced that and, had a good community there. I wasn't just solely focused on getting done with school. So it took me a little longer, but I remember standing at graduation with some folks who were actually in the years below me because all my friends had already graduated. And they're all kind of moping about like, dang, did we make a huge mistake by, they had spent maybe 8 years in the program. I had spent 10. And they're like, just like, dang, was this a mistake? Like all of their classmates are finishing residency and getting jobs, and we're just finishing medical school. And I was like, I'm happy. Like I got a family. I got a great hobby that I now kind of have as a second job. Like I feel like, my mom always told me, don't put your life on hold really for anything. Like if you want to get married, have kids, pursue a hobby like to a really high level, just go for it. Don't feel like you have to put your life on hold because you never know how long your life's going to be.
Wow,
That's-
that's solid advice.
yeah, that's
Go
good.
mom. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Shout out Gloria Drake. She'll listen to this for sure. She listens to everything.
Well, that's great advice. So I hope every listener is listening to that
Yeah.
advice because that's very true. How did you discover your first ultra?
So this is kind of a fun story. I was running in Forest Park on the Leif Erikson Trail, which is just an 11-mile kind of wide stretch that cuts straight through the park. There's actually really nice single track trails that go off of it, but I was too scared to go on those. I felt like I would get lost. So that was my trail running. I would stick on that. And I met a friend also running. His name was Sven. and we just kind of were running the same pace. So we ended up running together for a while. And he was just like, "Hey, you should sign up for the Mackenzie River 50K lottery." And I went home and did that, like at the advice of this guy that I had just met. And he did it too, but he didn't get in the lottery, so he didn't do the race. But I did that race. I drove down by myself. I slept in the back of my aunt's Prius and like didn't know anyone, didn't have a crew, didn't know what I was doing. Ran the race. Actually met my husband at that race.
Well, look at that.
And
That's
the
awesome.
rest is history. Yeah.
Did you? It's funny. That's kind of how my first real
Oh, really?
ultra I had to travel to. I slept in the front seat of the car. I was like all cranked
Jeez.
up. I had no idea
Setting
what I was
yourself up
doing.
for success.
So how did that first race go? So obviously this was a distance you probably weren't used to running at all. Did you have any lessons learned during this?
Well, I think the biggest lesson was to not wait around at the aid stations too long.
Mm-hmm.
I was running with the lead women for a while, and one of the women actually eventually said to me, "Hey, you should go ahead. Like I can tell that you're not like working too hard." So I went ahead a little bit, and then another woman who wasn't in that lead pack kind of blew by, and I'll never forget standing at that aid station. I got red vines and like brownie bites in my hands. And this girl just comes ripping by. Callie Cooper is her name. And she had a pack swap situation. Like she was gone. And I was like, okay, yeah. So now I hardly ever stop at aid stations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's but hey, there are some runners that they want to spend time at every aid station. They're having a party.
Yeah, you pay a lot of money. Like ultras are really expensive. And I think one of the big perks is like there's a lot of food, a lot of good options. I mean, yeah, I guess it depends on your goal. Like I ran the Speed Goat 50K one year and I really struggled. And that year I definitely spent a lot of time at the aid stations because I felt like I needed both a physiologic and an emotional pick me up. So there's a time and place for it. But if you're trying to, be super competitive and run as fast as you can, don't linger too long, or at least think about what you want before you get there. Get what you need and go, because it can, especially when you have brain fog from running a long time, you can stand there a lot longer than you realize just staring at all the snacks.
Yeah, you can get lost in time, and then you're like, I just spent 20 minutes at this one aid station.
Or if you know somebody at the aid station, and then you just start talking to them, you're like, 10 minutes goes by, and you're like, well, I gotta go, dude.
Can you see
real.
Rachel standing at this aid station with like handfuls of red vines, and the lead person runs by, and she's like,
I was like, nah.
So were you like leading at that point?
Yeah.
I guess obviously.
Yeah, I was leading, and then I think there was like 3 miles to go, and I couldn't catch her. I mean, I tried to go as soon as I could, but I couldn't catch her.
It was the red vines.
Yeah, I like red vines.
I'm guessing that's the Mackenzie River Trail Run PK.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, wow,
It's a great
that's
race.
An impressive time for your very
Pretty fast
first
time.
50K.
Well, it's net downhill and it's pretty non-technical. I don't think I cracked like top 10 times in that. Maybe it's a fast time in general, but it's also a fast course.
Well, that helps. Yeah, but
Yeah.
4 hours 23 minutes. That's pretty solid for your first 50K.
I mean, 10th overall, second place female. It's pretty good.
So that
Thanks,
was definitely a lesson learned. How long did it take you to come up with a strategy for the next race?
Well, I think it's just been kind of a long journey of optimizing things, and I think I've changed a lot since. I mean, it's been almost a decade since I've been trail running, so it's fun to reflect on that. And I'm trying to remember what my next race would have been. I ran a lot of local Oregon 50Ks. Oh, you got some notes there.
I've got your ultrasign up pulled up here. Your next one was Nut 50K and then the Elk King 50K, which both you podiumed.
Yeah, those are great races. I don't think I had crew for either of those races, but I definitely tried to be more efficient at the aid stations.
Since you're running these local Oregon races, did you ever run with Cam Haines?
No.
No?
He's the Speedland, like, bloody shoes, bow hunter guy. Yeah. I definitely know who he is, but I haven't touched base with him at all. Yeah.
Matt's
It was a
definitely
big
a
deal.
Cam
I'm a
Hammond fan.
Cam fan.
So I see that you jumped into your first 50 miler after this, which was North Face.
Yep. Yeah. So my husband and I, we weren't dating at the time, but we drove down to that race together. That was a tough race. I just remember running with some guy that I made friends with, and we were like counting out our steps, like, okay, we're gonna run for 50 steps and then we'll walk for 20. Like that, we were that desperate, like trying to get through this thing that it was tough.
It's a big difference, 50K to 50 miles.
It
It really
is.
is.
There's nothing in between. Yeah. Totally different bear.
What mile, do you remember what mile it really hit you?
At the North Face 50 miler, I really don't. It was probably around like 35 because
That
I'd
was
done
me.
enough PKs. Yeah. And then there's still 15 miles to go and you're pretty deep into it. Yeah. I think it was probably
Yeah,
around then.
yeah. Reality hits pretty hard in your first 50 miler and your first 100 miler. You're like,
Oh yeah. You're like, what have I got myself into?
I still have like 15 miles left.
Yeah.
That's not bad. So I skipped right over this though. So Mackenzie River is where you met your husband, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where did you meet him at the finish, or did you just blow by him in the race and was like, got to keep up?
No, I think he actually won that race. I met him at the finish line, and then there were a bunch of people swimming in the Mackenzie River after, and he was there. And he had some of, Dr. Bronner's soap. It's kind of like multi-purpose. You can use it for toothpaste,
Yes, I've heard
soap,
of it.
body
Yeah.
soap. He had some of that, the peppermint scent. And, if you've ever run an ultra or a marathon, or if you've ever chafed in your life, you'll know that
Mhm.
peppermint is not the substance that you want on your body. And I will never forget like rubbing that peppermint soap on my body and just absolutely burning, but trying to pretend that it was not hurting because I was like kind of interested in this guy.
Well, obviously it wasn't bothering him then.
Yeah, I guess not.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to use that like after some of my races, but that stuff's too strong sometimes. Like
The
you're
peppermint
talking.
is
Yes.
we still use that kind of soap, but we use the almond scent now, and it's
Yes.
much more calming and less burning. Yeah.
Yeah, that peppermint, you're not kidding.
Well, there's not much worse than, think that you didn't chafe the whole time, and then you go get in the shower and that water hits and it's instant.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine adding peppermint to
I
it.
know.
I'm guessing with it being your first 50 miler, you probably had some brand new chafing spots.
Oh, yeah, that was a Mackenzie River 50K, but I definitely did. Yeah. I
Oh, that was
definitely had
Mackenzie River.
that was a Mackenzie River 50K, but
So
yeah.
up to your Mackenzie River, what was your longest distance up to that point before the 50K?
I think I did a 20-mile training run with my friend Sven, out in the Tillamook Forest. Yeah. So it was quite a jump. Like I had never done a
Yeah.
road marathon. Not that that would have helped because I feel like a flat road marathon is gonna, like time-wise, is not gonna be like a great, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's not gonna
It
do too
doesn't
much for
translate
you.
well.
Yeah, but like a 3.5 hour or 2.5 hour trail run is probably a better stimulus for the fit.
Well, it looks like you did try another 50 miler before you jumped into the 100K. You did the Elkhorn Crest 50 miler, and then you did the Sean O'Brien 100K.
Yeah.
Tell
We're
us about
going
this
so far
100K.
back here.
I know, right? Sometimes it's hard to remember, but I'm sure you'll have some good stories as we go through this. I've already heard it
Yeah.
go.
All right.
Sean O'Brien 100K. That's an interesting name. I've never heard of this race. I've
Yeah,
heard
it
of
used
some
to
of the
be a
other
golden
ones.
ticket race back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, so my Tyler had been hunting a golden ticket for probably 5 years, so this was part of that saga. And since he was going down there, I would also be going down there, and I wasn't particularly like, oh, I want to run 100K, but I was like, we're going, I might as well hop in on the action. So I did it as well. I remember I ran in Las Sportivas, and like they just killed my feet. Like, I mean, just not the right race for it. Like they're a great mountain shoe, but I for those buttery California trails. I was like, why am I wearing these? And actually, one of my friends who I met at the Mackenzie River 50K was working at an aid station there. His name was Keith. And I took a wrong turn. There were all these different races going on. And I took a left and I should have taken a right. And I ran down this hill. It felt like I ran down very far and had to run back up. And I was super down on myself. And I was just like, Keith, I need a hug. And he was like, all right, suck it up. Let's go.
Did you at least get a hug?
I did get a hug. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually the thing I most frequently ask for at aid stations at Elkhorn Crest. Like, I got to this aid station. They're like, what do you need? Oranges, bananas, like gels. And I was like, I just love a hug.
I love that. That's awesome.
It sounds like this little lady that comes to our races, Virginia. She'll come in on each lap and she'll say, Matt, can I have a hug? I'm like, yeah, I need a
That's
hug.
so sweet.
She kind of like feels down. She gets a hug. She goes back out and rocks the next lap.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's all the fuel you need. That's really
Hey,
sweet.
you just need a hug and some red vines.
Yep.
So the next, the next 100K we jump into here. Well, you did the Speedcoat 50K, which you were talking about that a little bit earlier, I believe. How did that one's got a ton of elevation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I think we drove to that one too from Portland, and that was rough. I was in the thick of grad school during that race, and I was so stressed. I think I had a stomach ulcer because like every time I ate, my stomach hurt super bad. So I like wasn't doing super hot on nutrition. We ended up sleeping even higher up in elevation. Like I think we drove up to Alta and slept in the parking lot up there in the back of a minivan. And like just obviously didn't sleep because I think we were at like, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000 feet. And then tried to do this race and it did not go well. Like, but I will say I'm really proud of that because I wanted to drop out very early on and I finished the race, and it took a lot of fortitude just to get to that finish line. And while the result is absolutely nothing flashy, I feel like I got a lot out of it, and just like, knowing that I can do hard things and I can get through it when it gets really tough. I think it took me 9.5 hours, and I was hoping to run 2 or 3 hours faster than that. So, I think we learn a lot more when things don't go well than when they do.
Yeah. I've always said like you learn more getting humbled than you do winning. It's the honest truth. You feel in the moment it's the worst thing ever. The next day you're like, I'm awesome. Like I did it. I didn't quit. I just, nothing went right, but you know what? I finished it. And that speaks a lot of volumes to, character and to grit and just not giving up, because I mean, let's be honest, you get used to getting a podium on occasion, and when everything just blows up and goes wrong, some people just quit. They don't even want to finish the race. And I'm like, well, I still want to finish. Like, that's the goal, is to finish. Not every race is going to be perfect.
You go into it like, this is what I'm going to do, finish here. And then once that goes out the window, it's like, now we're just finishing. Now we're finishing. We're not going to quit today. We're going to finish it.
And you might even have some glimmers of feeling okay, after you feel horrible. And that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily finish in a place or time that you're excited about. But I think it's a good lesson for your body if you ever want to go on to do 100 milers or 100Ks, like to get through a 50K, having low points and knowing that you can come out the other side. You can draw on that when you go up in distance.
Yep. Yeah. It's good advice, because you start learning things to help you fix that, that bonk or that, because most of the time, a lot of this stuff is correctable.
Yeah.
It's something that you just weren't paying attention to, or, something didn't go right, but you can usually work your way through it if you give it enough time.
Yep.
So that's great advice. Waldo, I've not heard of this one either. You've got all kinds of races I've never heard of. The Waldo 100K.
Yeah, that's another classic Oregon race. It used to be directed by Craig Thornley, who's the Western States race director. just a beautiful, I think it's in August, Oregon 100K. You go around these lakes, you go up, you go around. Actually, I don't know if you go around Waldo Lake, but it's a great 100K.
Yeah, you had a solid performance there too. First female, 11 hours, 42 minutes. So obviously things are, getting more and more dialed in as we progress here. So you're like what? Let's see, Waldo, 100K. So we're 3 years into ultras at this point, almost 3.5. And what I enjoy seeing in your ultra sign up is that you're, like the Speed Goat was the end of July.
Mm-hmm.
Waldo 100K is middle of August. So like you're just like working on races, almost every other month you're at least doing a race for a little while and then you take a long break. Do you focus, like when you're really focused in on a race, do you do a solid training block and just focus on that one, or do you still try to race some in the middle?
Back then, I don't think I was really trying to be too eloquent about my training. I don't think I didn't have a coach for a long time. I had a coach for the Mackenzie River 50K, but then I feel like I just kind of did my own thing for a while and I didn't really plan things out too far in advance. Now it's a little different. Like, I think my philosophy now is have a couple races in the year that are your North Stars, A races, goal races. Last year for me, or I guess this year, I'm already into 2025. It
Close.
was trying to get into Western States. So doing the Black Canyon 100K. Western States obviously was a major focus race. Definitely had a planned out block going into that. And then the JFK 50 miler. Those were kind of my main focus races. But if you look at my year, those aren't the only races that I did. I did a lot of other process races within that. I ran the Tillamook Burn 50 miler in May and really just ran that as a practice for Western States. So I tried to run that like I would Western States, practice cooling, practice fueling, try to have my pace be something that I felt I could sustain for 100 miles. And then other than that, I just, my husband ran the Hong Kong 100K. And so obviously if I'm going all the way to Hong Kong, I'm going to race too. So I ran the Hong Kong 33K in January, had some friends running a Shamrock 8K on the road in Portland. So I ran that in March. Let's see, what else do we have? April ran the Gorge Waterfalls 30K. And that was just like, Jeremy Long at Daybreak Racing and Dylan Bowman kind of collaborate on that, and they're good friends of ours. So, and it's just in our backyard. So I wanted to hop in on the fun there. Yeah, really, like if I feel like I have the energy to race and I feel excited about it, kind of regardless of how my training had been going, I'm probably just going to hop in and not be too hard on myself if it doesn't go well. And sometimes it does just happen to go really well. So you never know until you try.
100%.
Absolutely.
I see that you've done UTMB on here as well.
I haven't done the full shebang, but I've done CCC.
Yes.
So about half of it. And then I did OCC twice. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
How did you like those? I mean, I've always heard good things. I know there's a lot of stuff going on right now with all the UTMB
A lot of drama.
But, it's still a beautiful place.
It is.
You can never take that away from
It's
the
a cool
people there
event.
and the race. It's just amazing.
Yeah. It's a really cool vibe over there. I really loved CCC when I did it in 2019. I had a lot of friends doing the race and it was just a blast. I definitely, I think 20K into that race, I had already blown my quads. And I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm having so much fun. This is beautiful. There's people out on course. It's a perfect day. There's sheep everywhere and herding dogs and mountains and people speaking Italian and French. This is so cool. So I think that kind of joy and excitement just like got me through that race. And I actually ended up in the top 10, which was pretty amazing considering how horrible I felt only 20% into the race. And I really want to do UTMB someday. So getting over there and doing those shorter races, knowing how to manage the nerves, because I mean, just watching the live stream of the UTMB start, I often find myself just crying because it's just so epic. So I think being in it and practicing, kind of keeping your energy low and managing all of that is hopefully going to come into play in the next couple years when I'm able to do the full one.
Yeah, and they do such a good job with the coverage on that event, and you're right, like just watching the start, it's nothing like a start in the US. Like, I mean, the streets are lined, people are everywhere. It's probably the most epic start of a race you can watch, period, like hands down. But
Agreed.
I mean, they live for that. Like, that is their thing every year. It is so cool. It
It is
truly
cool.
is.
Yeah.
So let's jump into 2024 now, Rachel. And you've already talked a little bit about the Black Canyon and stuff, but let's jump into the Black Canyon 100K. And you obviously had a really good day.
Yeah.
You first female, you got your golden ticket, 8 hours and 47 minutes. So obviously things went pretty well that day. Was that your goal time, or what was your strategy going in?
I mean, yeah, I think it's nice to kind of know splits, and it's nice to have things to kind of, at least if nothing else, to guide your crew on when to expect you at the aid stations. But since then, I'm trying intentionally to really go away from being too hyper focused on time, because I really think it can actually limit us in that, if you know the time you need to hit and you're getting to an aid station and you're a couple minutes fast, you might slow down. You might think, okay, this is good enough, even if you feel great and totally fine. So I guess I will say at that race, I definitely was really paying attention to the time, trying to hit certain splits. My friend Keely Henninger has the course record there. So I had all of her splits. I had been training with her, and she's just reassuring me, oh yeah, you can run this time. You're going to do great. But then of course there's lots of other things that come into play. The race was delayed by 2 hours. So instead of starting at 7 a.m., it started at 9 a.m. because there was ice on the roads and they couldn't get the buses up to the start. There was a lot of snow on course, a lot of mud. I think I had mud caked on my legs, like all the way up to my shorts. So, that's another fun thing about trail running. It's not like time is not the only determinant of success, because the conditions can change, the course can change. There's a lot more variables at play.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that race started 2 hours late this year.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, I woke up, I was eating my breakfast and putting on my anti-chafe, another thing I learned.
Absolutely.
I did all that stuff, and then Tyler, my husband, he was like, oh, the race is pushed back 2 hours. You want to go back to bed? And I actually fell back asleep, which was pretty cool because I feel like it's just a sign that I was chilling. And then we went, actually, I think initially it was only pushed back 90 minutes or an hour. So we got a little more sleep, and then we went to the race. We all lined up on the start, and right before they're about to start it, they're like, oh, we're going to push it back another 30 minutes. Some people aren't here yet. So we had to go, and I think a lot of folks, I don't know anyone personally who was terribly affected by it, but I think a lot of people, a lot of runners, we're type A, we anticipate things, we time our nutrition, we do our perfect warm up. And this was a perfect exercise in rolling with the punches, not getting flustered. You just got to laugh and move forward.
Well, you obviously did.
Yeah.
I mean, you kept it under control. How was the start of the race? Did you try to push the pace, or did you like have your own strategy and just kind of like laid back and ran more in the later part of the race?
I grouped up with a lot of women early on. Heather Jackson, an amazing cyclist and trail runner. She took it out hard, which I really respect. And I'm trying to get to that point where I'm just like, yeah, let's send it. We'll talk about this later, but that was what I was trying to do at JFK. But I knew that I wanted to get, my main goal was to get a golden ticket. Heather didn't need a golden ticket because she had placed top 10 the year prior. So she had the freedom to, shoot her shot. But
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to get a golden ticket. And then obviously if you're in golden ticket contention, then it's kind of fun to try to move up and win or get second. But I was running with a couple other gals. I think we had a group of 5 that I was just running with for quite a while. And then eventually I kind of pulled ahead, I think, in that group. And then Becca Wendell, another amazing athlete who does not get enough attention, she caught up with me, and she and I ran together for a very long time. We caught Heather together, passed her together, and then I think maybe 10 or 12 miles to go. You can watch this on the live stream, but we're climbing out of this riverbed and it's kind of slick. And I had actually run that section a couple days prior, so I knew that it was slick. I knew that there was a lot of cacti around, so it's not like you can just grab on and pull yourself up. But I did find a little like bush that was not too spiky that I could use to pull myself up. And I did that in the race, and I think she just fell back into the water. And
No.
my pacer, I know. I mean, it's exciting though, right? My pacer caught up with me, and I thought that it was her. And so I was like, yeah, girl, way to go. And he was like, it's me. You got to make a move now. Like, she's, because once you lose contact, if you just put a little surge in, you can kind of break people, so to speak. So I put a little surge in and then ended up, I think I was only 5 minutes ahead of her at the end. And there's no way I would have run as fast as I did if I hadn't been running with her from, mile 35 all the way up to 50.
Man, I feel like we were watching a NASCAR race there for a minute.
A lot of tactics, a lot of moves, big moves.
This is awesome. Yeah, man. So was she okay?
Yeah, she's great. She's tough. She's a trail runner.
So, and I guess she gained some ground to catch back up to you, or 5 minutes. That's not too bad in a that
Yeah,
distance.
no, she was never that far back. Like, I saw her at the next aid station, so she was probably only, instead of running right together, we were probably 30 seconds apart. She wasn't like laying in the river for 5 minutes.
She was right back out.
Yeah.
So let's touch on this one real quick, because this is pretty amazing. If I looked at all of this right, we're at Western States at this point. We're in a 100-mile race, and this is your first 100-mile race. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So Western States, 100 miles. You run in 17 hours, 28 minutes, and you're top 10 female. Way to go! That's how you run your first 100-mile race. Were you nervous going into this?
I think I was a little bit nervous. More nervous in that I had put a lot of effort into training for it, and I just felt like I wanted that to come through. I think anytime you try hard for something and you care about something, it feels more disappointing when things don't go the way that you want them to. But actually, Western States was the race where you kind of shoot yourself in the foot for focusing too much on splits. So the cool thing about Western States is you can look at historic splits of anyone ever running the race at every aid station. So I studied that. I knew that historically, if I ran, I think my goal going in was to run 18 hours, 18 to 18:30. And I hope I'm not misremembering this, but I think that would normally put you in the top 5 or top 3, obviously depending on the year. But this year was so fast, and that was only good enough for 8th. And I ran, what did I run? 17:30 something? 28. That's pretty fast. That's a lot faster than I was hoping to run. And it was only 8th place. So I think part of the lesson there is, obviously first 100-miler, I really wanted to have a good experience to the point where I wanted to come back. I wanted my training to come through, but I also don't think I want to be more gutsy this year, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because, if you had told me going into the race I was going to run 17:27, I would be so hyped. But I would also hope that would put me higher than 8th place. But it's so cool to be part of the movement of women's trail running in the US, just leveling up every year.
Yeah, it's that's one of the things we were talking about on one of the recent podcasts is our last few events, we've had women win some of the longer distances outright.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it truly is. It's fun to watch, and it's fun to see, some of the really strong women that just come out, and I mean, they just absolutely crush the course, and it's so fun to watch.
And they have fun doing it. Like a lot of the guys, they're struggling or they're like, oh, but the girls, I mean, they're coming through and they're just flying and they're smiling and they're having fun. And like, I'm coming back next year. I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay, this is awesome.
It's pretty awesome. So let's talk about JFK 50. Now, that time, there's just looking at your time, I have to say, you did try to send it a little bit at least in this race, or a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
lot.
I wanted to hear the story, but I feel like you did kind of shoot your shot a little bit. But tell us what were you thinking going in, the strategy, and then you obviously had a really good day. I've listened to a little bit of the other podcasts you were on, just kind of talking back and forth, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, congratulations too.
Thank you guys. I appreciate that. It was my first East Coast foray, and it was awesome. It was so fun because I feel like on the West Coast, I know a lot of people, and I feel very at home, but it was cool to experience all the community and just new terrain to me. The Appalachian Trail is so cool. Yeah, you're right. I really did try to send it. Like that was kind of the goal, was just to put myself in the pain cave early on and survive and just get the absolute most out of myself on the day. And it was quite different from, Black Canyon or Western States, where I had splits and I had kind of what I thought was possible, and I tried to just stick to that. But for JFK, I wanted to leave it more open-ended. Like I knew what the splits were at certain spots, so I could kind of check in, but I didn't want that to influence my effort at all. I didn't want to hold myself back because I was ahead by a certain number of minutes, or even if I was behind, I didn't want that to stress me out. So while I was aware of what the course record was and what the splits were to get there, I didn't want that to have too much of a say in my day, because I wanted it to be more effort based and see what was possible.
Is that, when you say effort based, had you planned, like had you did any training runs at that pace for an extended amount of time to test it? I assume so.
Yeah, I did a lot of flat kind of paced running, which I don't do a ton of that for trail runs. I guess I did a little bit for Western States, but this was felt a lot more like marathon training, where I'm trying to hit certain splits. I'm trying to get my body used to moving in that direction, or moving that kind of cadence. So I knew what the paces felt like because I had been doing it in training, and I knew kind of what was possible from what I was seeing in training.
Well, and like you said, the AT is, a very beautiful area, but also at the same time, it's pretty technical. So, the JFK 50 is unique in a way that, like, you're running road, but you're also on the AT for a section too. So, you got to kind of have like different strategies going into this race. Now, I've never ran JFK 50. It's on my list. I'm hoping I get to do it this year. If not, it's going to be soon.
You should.
But how did you feel like going on to the AT? Did that kind of shock the system a little bit, or were you just like, we got this, we're rolling?
I think, you bring up a really interesting point in that you have to be good at a lot of different things. You have to be basically a fast marathoner, and you have to be a pretty good technical runner in order to run a fast time there. You got to hone both of those skill sets. Mary Denholm and I definitely went out hot. The first 2.5 miles is on the road, kind of uphill. And I think we were 2 minutes up on the course record at that first checkpoint, 2.5 miles in. So we were definitely going for it. And then once I got on the AT, I wanted that to feel like playtime. Like I wasn't thinking about pace. I wasn't thinking about much. I was just kind of trying to play. And I think I was still pushing on there. So it didn't feel easy, but I wouldn't say it shocked the system because I was having so much fun. So any physiologic, hole it was putting me in, I think was outweighed by the the fun that was being had.
It's definitely a unique race. You said it really well about you have to be able to run a fast marathon and you have to be able to run technical. And the thing is when you're training for races like that, you're usually training for road or you're training for the trail. But for this one, if you want to be competitive, you have to be able to do both. And you have to be able to do both really well because people run this race really fast, obviously. And you did it exceptionally well. Did you pushing the pace the way you did in the beginning? Did that cause any type of GI issues later?
I will say I didn't eat a whole lot in the race. I had what was a conservative nutrition plan for me. You know, I think there's a lot of craze about high carb these days. And while I think it's great for some people, it seems to be working wonderful for some people. I think especially women we're not necessarily needing to consume 120 grams of carbs per hour. And I think I studied fat metabolism for my PhD, so I'm well aware of, substrate utilization in the body. And I don't really subscribe to that philosophy. And with all that said, I definitely wasn't even able to stick to my my conservative goal. I think I was shooting for, I don't know, 70 to 80 grams, maybe even 60 to 80 grams of carbs per hour. I don't know what I ended up consuming in the end, but it was substantially less than that. But I honestly felt great. I didn't have GI issues, no nausea. Actually, at Black Canyon, I had to stop and go to the bathroom quite a few times. And I think part of that was I was eating about 100 grams of carbs per hour the first 4 hours of the race. And I think I was just eating more than my body needed. And so it was like, what do you want me to do with this? It's coming out the other end. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and you said it well, like some things work for certain people, but it's like a pair of shoes. I mean, that's like calorie intake and food. It's everybody's slightly different. It's just like electrolytes.
Yeah.
I sweat so much sodium that it's insane the amount of salt that I can take. And other people, I give them salt pills and their fingers start swelling, and it's like, oh, chill out. So it's the same way with food, and to your point, like women are more efficient at burning fat.
Absolutely.
Obviously. So that already helps in a way, period. But it's funny to hear you say that, like, you didn't even hit your low point.
Conservative. Yeah. Which was probably not optimal. Like, I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying, I think it can also be detrimental to try to force yourself to do more than you actually need because everyone is on this high carb craze.
Yeah. But to your point, like the one thing that you show is that you didn't lose the race because of it.
Yeah.
You can
I could have
still
run faster if I ate more too.
Yeah, maybe, but you broke the course record.
It's so funny. I was talking to my husband after, and I was like, gosh, I forgot to take my headlamp off. I ran with a headlamp on my head for 27 miles,
Did
and
you
no one
really?
else even started with a headlamp. I felt like such a loser. And then he reminded me, he's like, hey, you won the race. You set the course record. You're pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yes. He needs to keep patting you on the back that. Do not go down that rabbit hole. But, to your point, like there are lessons learned where you think you can do better, and that's awesome. Like even when you have a great performance, you stand back and you're like, I could have done this better. I could have done this better. And that's amazing, and that's awesome because that only helps everyone get better and sharing that stuff. And I hope people hear you say that you didn't hit your calorie numbers, but you were still able to race, because you're right. The high carb, high calorie thing is like taking off.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everybody. At what point did you feel like it was becoming work? Like it was starting to get hard. I'm sure there towards the latter part of the race, you're like, okay, I'm just ready to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, the road section was definitely felt like it dragged on for a long time. And there's some punchy little climbs in there at those last 8 miles. But definitely on the CNO towpath, that basically flat marathon you do along the river, I just felt so monotonous. Like I was trying to work with some guys, but they would be a little too fast or a little too slow. And that just, I think mentally just felt kind of lonely. It's not so much that my body felt like it was work, but it was more emotionally felt like work because most of my training, I had people I was running with. I got to shout out Aubrey Mijer, one of my neighbors here, who's an amazing runner. He actually went to NC State, a little kind of East Coast connection, but
Yeah.
he's just like did pretty much every key workout with me. He would break the wind, he would carry my snacks, open cattle gates. Like I
That's
didn't have
awesome.
him there, so I was pretty lonely.
Did you have, so I assume you had a crew though, right?
Yeah. My husband and my 2-year-old were out crewing, and that was another cool part. Like
That is
every time
awesome.
every time I passed them, like Lewis, my son, was in the arms of some new person, and I just think that's so cool how we all kind of help each other out.
Yeah.
I mean, the running community is amazing. It doesn't matter East Coast, West Coast, doesn't matter. The running community is pretty damn amazing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we will stop here and ask you some questions real quick because I know we got a hard cut off here very soon. But one last question, and then we'll start the real questions. But how did it feel crossing the finish line at JFK 50, knowing that you sent it and things didn't happen the way you wanted them to, but your race did? So how did that feel?
It felt like mainly, place, time aside, it just felt so good to try that hard and suffer that much and like know that I had put forth a really good effort. Because sometimes, you win races and you mess things up or maybe you just don't try as hard as you should. But that one, I really feel like I went for it and I tried hard, and I'm just proud of the effort.
And you killed it.
She said it.
Congratulations.
It paid off.
So let's start real quick, and then Matt will be pulling up the listener questions, and he'll go through.
We got a few from our team.
But the very first question we ask every listener is why? Like, why do you run? What keeps you in this sport? You've taken time off, you've been burnt out, then you find ultras, and obviously you've had some ups and downs throughout ultras. But why do you continue to run?
I really enjoy it. I think a lot of times when I'm running, I think to myself, this is what I was made to do. It just feels natural and it makes me feel like the best version of myself.
And I mean, it's also how you started your family too.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. And I think it's really cool that you're taking your son to the races too, by the way, because my daughter grew up in races. She even got to the point she wanted to run them, and she signed up for like this 17 miler when she was 11, and she's never ran again.
Oh, that is hilarious. I'm so curious what Lewis is I think at some point he's gonna be like, okay, can we not do this every weekend? But for now, he seems to love it. I mean, he's gotten to travel to a lot of cool places and meet a lot of great people. So
that's it. He's going to meet so many cool people. He's going to love, and that's going to only make him a better person, like as far as being social.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be so good for him.
Well, I mean, that's definitely helped my kids with them coming to all of our events and all the races. My little boy, he's 3, and he'll be like, when I get big, I want to run like daddy. And then my daughter, who is 6, she runs races now. She'll do 5K, she'll do 1 milers, and then we put on a race in September. It's a loop race, 3-mile loop. And she said, Daddy, I want to do the 3-hour. So she did 2 laps during our 3-hour race, and she loved it.
That's so great.
She's 6.
She ran 2 3-mile loops by herself.
Wow.
By herself.
That's so cool for her independence too.
Yep.
I mean,
so I mean, yeah,
like
she
was extremely proud of herself. When she come into that aid station, she was just smiling.
Big old smiles. And so I mean, that's what you got to look forward to is little one, growing up seeing you do all this cool stuff.
All right, Matt, take us off, sir.
All right.
We got to get Rachel done soon.
We got some from our team. Would you rather train in cold or hot?
If I'm training for Western States, I'd have to say hot. But growing up in Minnesota, I'm used to running in the cold. So actually, I think I would say cold just for, I don't know. Just I think it's more enjoyable. The heat is just tough, but it's good for you.
Well, the second part of that question is how would you train in the cold, or how would you get used to the cold? But you grew up in the cold.
You just bundle up. I think the tricky part is like for your face and your eyes, trying to figure out the dance of, I mean, if you're if you're exhaling into your neck gaiter, it's going to get wet and then it's going to freeze. And then also if you have some eye protection on, it's probably going to fog up. So that's the toughest part, but you can run in really cold weather and bundle up and be just fine.
How do we solve this neck gaiter issue? Because I only run in cold for like 2 months here because we just have a bitter cold and then it goes right back to 90 degrees very soon. I have yet to figure out this neck gaiter thing where it just gets completely soaked and I have to take like 4 gaiters with me.
I don't think I ever use them.
Oh, I have to.
You got that big beard though. You got a built-in.
Oh yeah, it's
built-in one.
True.
It
He
saves
just
it
kind
all.
of wraps that over his ears.
You just flip it up. You can't see nothing. The next question is, do you train in the morning or the evening?
It just depends on the schedule. I think I prefer morning, but I work night shift. I work 28-hour shifts. So it's like I run whenever I have time, but if I have control over my schedule, I probably prefer the morning.
Did you say 28-hour shifts?
Yes, it's crazy. It's
Do
so
you get
crazy.
to sleep during any of that, like there, or are you just working for 28 hours?
So do you work like 2 shifts a week? Is that how that works?
No, you get the day when you get off in the morning, you get the rest of that day off, but then you got to come in the next day at like 5 a.m. So yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
That's residency though.
Hey,
That's probably
Oh, okay.
yeah.
This
I
is
got
why
you.
she's good at ultra running.
That's
She's
still a
up,
lot.
and this is perfect training. She's training while she's at work to stay up during the runs.
As fast as she's running, she ain't got to stay up, Matt.
You're right. 17
UTMB though.
hours.
UTMB. What we're getting ready for that.
There you go. You're getting ready for that one.
Let's see. The next question is, out of the distances that you've done, what has been your favorite so far?
I think I'm probably best at the PK, but I really loved Western States. Like that full day adventure, 100 miles. I'm excited to do more of those. So yeah.
And the last question is, what has been your favorite event so far?
Ooh, probably CCC. The 3K at UTMB. It's nice. It starts at 7 a.m. It's beautiful. You run into the dark a little bit, but you're usually in bed by a reasonable hour. It's like the perfect all-day adventure.
Perfect.
I love it. Obviously, I thought you were going to say that when he asked that, just because you'd already talked about wanting to do the full UTMB. I was like, and I've seen you've been to it multiple times. So, and I also see that you're already signed up for Western States for
Yep.
2025. So good luck there. We'll have to get you back on at some point next
love
year and
that.
see how you're doing.
Yeah, you guys got to send me some more East Coast race recommendations. It's funny when you're saying you don't know the races that I'm doing, but I probably don't know the ones that you're doing. So we got to have a little more cross-pollination.
Perfect. We will definitely send you some. There's a lot of good race directors around here.
Yeah.
A lot of good race directors.
A lot of good races and a lot of good views. Like, you climbing all these mountains and just the views that you get to see is pretty amazing.
Cool.
But real quick, Rachel, do you have any questions for us?
Who's your favorite guest that you've had on the podcast? Your favorite episode, if you have to recommend to a new listener, maybe a West Coast listener who's not as familiar?
Man,
I would say the most, I'm going to say it this way, the most touched I've been in any podcast, like as far as like feeling wise, was when we had Cassandra Clemens on. So she's now a triathlete, but she was born with lung issues. She's a double lung transplant. She talked about like she would walk out in high school dragging her oxygen tanks with her, and would watch them run on the track. Thinking, I wonder what it would feel like to run. Like, I would love to run. Long story short, like if you ever get a chance, definitely listen to the podcast. It's amazing.
I will.
We've got a couple on here that are just like truly moving.
I think I teared up during that one.
They told her she had a match. So she was like, she wasn't going to live much longer. She was already in the hospital. They told her they had a donor match, ended up not being a match. So then they go back and tell her and her husband that she's just not going to make it through the night.
Yep.
Oh my
They're going to have to take her off oxygen and,
she was saying her goodbyes.
Just say their goodbyes and get ready. And, her and her husband's in there, and her husband, I think she said, was like braiding her hair. Yep. And, they were just talking. And then later that night, they came in. I guess there was something happened, obviously, some type of fatal accident or something, but they had a donor match.
Wow.
They come in there and tell her, like, hey, we've got a match. We're taking you. And at this point, she doesn't even believe them.
No.
Like she's already like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing she remembers is waking up. And, a couple of days later, she said she woke up in her bed and she was like, wow, so this is what it feels like to breathe.
My goodness.
And the lungs that she got were from an endurance runner. So it took a while for her ribs to expand enough to fit those lungs. But now she has came out to our race. She did a great job. She did her first endurance run with us, but she's a triathlete. So she's running all kinds of triathlons. Just an amazing story.
It is.
Whoa. Cool. Yeah, I'm definitely going to put that in my queue. That's really cool.
It's probably the most moving story. We've had several.
Yeah.
We've had several. Another one was Heather Watson. She had a stroke in the middle of her marathon. She's had to learn how to walk all over again. She ran her very first race this year after the stroke.
Wow.
And then, Mary Cates is another one. She had a brain tumor, wasn't supposed to live at the age of 30, quit her job, started her own coaching business. She's amazing athlete. But I mean, we just have multiple stories, but those are probably 3 or 4 of the most. Is there one I'm missing here?
Well, I know Cassandra's, when she was talking to it, I could barely hold it together. So that was hard.
Yeah. Cassandra's, I think me and Matt were both like, trying not to cry on the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was rough. But now she's great. She's always out there doing her stuff.
And Rachel, that is by far the best question I think we've been asked on this podcast. Most of the time when we ask that, they're like,
yeah,
I didn't know you were going to ask me a question. Thank you. Best question yet. You win that award.
All right. Cool.
Well, Rachel, anything else?
I don't think so. It's been fun chatting with you guys. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, sharing your story. We definitely want to get you back on here sometime next year.
Do it.
Catch up, see how you're doing, and then actually maybe jump in a little bit more into running and training.
Well,
and
hopefully
learn more about you on that side.
Hopefully we see her out here on the East Coast more.
Yeah, and we'll send you a list of races. There's a lot of good race directors over here.
Yeah, please do. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.